really intrigued me about this right away off the top was the fact that you tackle all these different worlds and you mix them all, and it creates this huge, like, tapestry, this big drama to draw from. Like, you have the underworld with Bumpy, obviously. Then you have politics with Powell. And then you have religion with Malcolm and Powell again. My man's dipping in all of it.
Yeah.
So what inspired that, in the creation of the show?
I mean, isn't that Harlem? You just defined it. It's the ultimate place where people mixed and came together to mix. It might have been an African American center for 100 years, but it's always been a place where people come, want to hear music, want to join, want to have an experience where you're getting a taste of how other people live and what that's about.
But fundamentally, if you're doing a show that's a gangster show, we did Narcos, and if you're doing it, everything has been done. Like Italians do say, forget about it, but when you write it, it comes off as, oh no, we've seen that a million times. So what we were looking for is how do you create a distinctive a gangster show that isn't what we've seen before. So for Narcos, it was, shoot it in Colombia. Have the narcos actually talk in Spanish as opposed to English. Use subtitles. Go to places that most gangster shows haven't gone, and what you have is hopefully something good, but you also have something different that we haven't seen before. So that was the problem here. It's like, yes, we could tell just Bumpy Johnson's story, and we could show the fighting for turf and murders and moves and chess moves and all that, but we've seen all that in gangster shows. So really what we were looking for is, okay, how do we look at this story, Bumpy's story, from a fresh angle? And where that came from was his granddaughter, Margaret, when we interviewed her, she has since passed away, sadly, but she told us, Malcolm was up here in this apartment playing chess on
every
Sundays.
Sunday. Every Sunday.
And so all of a sudden it occurred, maybe this show is actually the collision of crime and civil rights, the criminal underworld and the civil rights movement. Now, you don't expect to hear those two things in the same sentence, but in fact, all of Malcolm's soldiers were former street gangsters in Harlem who found religion. You had Powell, who was a political big chief who kind of had some swagger, clearly, and acted a little gangster.
Yeah.
And you had Bumpy, of course, who is a legendary gangster. And what we were interested in examining is, now we thought, now we have a fresh angle. This is the history lesson of Harlem that you didn't learn in high school. This is the civil rights movement, but from a different angle. And I think that what happens then is, I would say to the writers, hey, if the scene is about crime, make sure some aspect has to do with rights, the rights of people. If it's a civil rights scene, make sure you put a little gangster in there.
Let's bring a little crime there.
Yeah, a little crime. And what that allows you to do is examine, allows you to do a gangster show in a way we haven't seen before. And then also, because we're set 50 years in the past, or even more, we're able to examine issues that still resonate today. But if you were shooting the show in the contemporary, people would they get their panties in a twist. And so you set it in the past, and now we can look at things like police brutality, opioid addiction, the emergence of social movements, the getting woke of a community, to use the phrase. We can look at that with the safe distance of time. But as you watch, you hopefully think, wow, this show's contemporary. It's not so, it's not only for people over 40 years old. It's for anybody who wants to get a look at what went on then and what's going on now. And we measure, there's been an incredible amount of progress on one level, and there's been no progress at all on another level. And that's really what the show explores.
How, what's the word? Necessary is it for you to make sure that you're representing these historical characters right? Because, like, my mom had told me about Powell, and she was like, he was a bit of a wild boy at points.
I didn't know that. He's pretty slimy. He's more. Well, no, similar to him. I learned. We both went to Howard, so I learned more so about Adam Clayton Powell and Thurgood Marshall and all that when I was in college, and so to have this kind of hygienic sense of who this person is, mythological even, and then see this, which obviously, yes, there's dramatization, but there's a lot of real mixed in.
For sure.
The guy was that slimy.
Slimy is relative.
Yeah.
He's slimy, but
for women.
But think about how much she got done.
A lot.
You know, that's what the balance is, and I think what we take great pride in is presenting characters that are grit, that are real, that are complex, and there's no good guy and white guy who's wearing any cowboy hats and coming in and saving the day, whether it's Bumpy or Malcolm or Adam Clayton Powell. Everybody has foibles, and that makes them human.
The other thing is we got the magnificent honor of working with Giancarlo Esposito.
Yes.
which you know, it's you get an actor of his caliber, and now all of a sudden, like the minute he started tossing lines about Miss Ohio and he's so good that you go like, we got to write to that. We can't, you know. And so and to the it's funny you bring this up because I think around episode 5, I turned to Paul and I said, you know, it's so much fun to have this guy leading into the women and all that and the dirty dealing, and we just have to we can't forget that he was literally one of the most important figures in the history of American civil rights, and like let's make sure we're making it clear that like his heart was in the right place.
Absolutely,
it's not other portions of his body.
Yeah,
but you know.
Because towards that point, there are people who, like, when we spoke to Nigel, like, explaining that, you know, people like Malcolm came from a place of peace.
Right.
Though, again, talking about relativity, other people can see that as being extreme. Yeah. So, you know, just having this full spectrum of these people and understanding, especially, and actually really do appreciate that you show that other side, or both of you show that other side, because it led me to understand that, you can't be just completely good.
Yeah, like, you can't be one thing.
And just to even get things done, particularly in America, like you just...
Well, and in a weird way, that's again, gangsterism. You know, there was certainly a level of gangsterism in the Nation of Islam, because when Malcolm was kicked out, Bumpy saw the need to protect Malcolm from the nation. So that part is clear, and then you know, in politics, there's a certain level of gangsterism that goes on as people horse trade for advantage. So but how about Nigel in that? Malcolm.
He's my favorite.
He is so pitch perfect in that role that we were astounded. And think about it, you know, without a great Malcolm, the show craters. The show craters without a great Malcolm.
One of the moments I was most proud of is one of, you know, we have great consultants. We've been blessed with great consultants who are telling us stories and have connections to the communities that we're writing about. And so some of Malcolm's people, his nephew and
his daughter.
Well, his daughter came but his nephew came to the set, and his nephew, who lives in Boston, was watching Nigel and couldn't handle it. Like, he felt so moved by the performance that he had to leave the set.
Wow.
And so for me, I'm like, Nigel's just exactly what it isn't just that he's, you know, he's doing more than an interpretation of Malcolm for me. He's really embodied this man's soul in a way that he's just tapping into something, and we're really blessed with having a bunch of actors who are doing that every day. And you know.
Well, and when you have Forrest Whitaker as your number one, like getting other great actors, we call Forrest, he's like catnip.
Yeah, exactly.
Forrest is here, come join the party, and people are like, okay, we're in. No, we don't care about how much you're paying. We're in.
And everybody shows up, you know. Like, there's nobody who's like, what are my lines? Like, people are like, okay, let's go.
No.
They're coming.
Nobody wants
that's
to
beautiful.
come off not prepared.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got such monsters. Like, I was telling them when the scene where she's reading the letter, and then you cut to Forrest just sitting there, you know, and it's like, you were my superhero, you were my this, and then Forrest, without a word,
it killed me, man. It broke me a little bit.
You know, I'm about to bawl out. Like,
no, that's Forrest, man.
But how about that scene between them when she comes in? That is, when I saw that scene, I thought, and also, how about Antoinette? I mean, woman...
She just told us that's her first role?
We just spoke to her.
Go toe-to-toe with Forrest.
When she said that, I'm sitting in the room. I had to contain myself.
She's a special gem. Like, watch
what are you talking about?
I don't think you were there in New York, but she came in to read, and it says, another actor's coming in to read. And we had also imagined, like, someone who was, like, you know, emaciated, junky. And so, but she came in, and so you know, physically Antoinette did not present as a junkie, but she sat down and we were recording it on videotape to distribute to the other producers. Forrest and I are sitting next to each other. She does this performance, and he and I just do one of these. It's like,
Like that's the one. That's the one. Yeah.
Like, real stuff.
Yeah.
Like you see an audition right from, and you're like, we just found the role. We don't have to look anywhere else. She is amazing. She was right out of Yale Drama School. So it was also like nobody else knows.
Yeah.
Both of you are bringing up amazing points, especially for me. Especially after speaking with everyone today, you went about it in a very thoughtful manner, and in a manner that kind of allowed a palette of people to come together, and not just the catnip of. I mean, that's a great part of it, the catnip of Forrest, but the idea that they felt that they can trust you. And especially as producers and also writers and all of that. But from your perspective, how do you build that trust?
Well, the first thing for us was getting a script that got Forrest to commit. You know, he can choose to do what he wants to do in this business. He can always have a job. And so first order of business was to achieve a working partnership with him where he trusted us with the material. Because keep in mind, he might like the first script, but he has to know there's going to be a good second one and third and fourth, etc. And that trust takes time to build with any actor you're working with, and that trust was built. And then I think that, you know, in general, the way Paul and I work is our goal is to be transparent, is to create an environment where, on the one hand, you know, as the showrunner of the show, there does have to be a kind of, I call it a benevolent dictatorship. Mm-hmm. You know, you do have to have an eye on what the vision for the show is and how that gets executed. Actors sometimes have ideas that don't square with that vision. But if you go to an actor and you let them know that your door is open 24/7 to talk about their ideas, but at the end of the day, they have to trust you to decide which idea is best for the show in its totality. And I think actors respect being being included, being told that your opinion, you're the guardian of that character. Mm-hmm. We're the guardians of multiple characters. We're the guardians of the entire show, but you're the guardian of that character, so I must listen to you and your instincts. And at the same time, you have to trust me to know what's right for the show in total. And people respected that. At one point, two actors came, and we had created a sex scene between them, and they sat down and they said, "Here's why we don't think that's the right way to go." And I listened, and I said, "Well, I'll tell you this. If I thought you guys were wrong, I would say so, and I would ask you to do that scene despite your discomfort. But after hearing you talk, I think you're right. Mm-hmm. And so let's hold that off." And it turned out to be the right decision to make.
Wow.
We were right. So that's what it is. You have to create a warm, safe space to create, but at the same time, you have to have a vision if you want the show to feel different and special.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I'd also say there's something unique about this project in that, you know, I can't tell you how many times there are people or PAs or production who would come up and tell us a story about their personal history with Bumpy Johnson, or how their fathers were saved or helped by them. And the connection that a lot of people had really influenced the commitment and helping us to kind of create a container of safety for all the artists, technicians, whoever it was. And you saw it. When you came to our set, everybody was proud to be there, happy, psyched. Nobody showed up late.
Well, and also what was interesting was, like, New York crews are famous for, like, you know, like, nothing phases them.
It's New Yorkers.
And, you know, the scripts, you know, whatever. For whatever reason, on this show, the crew would come, "When's the next script coming out?" Like, they wanted to know what happened next. Mm-hmm. And that's extremely rare. And it gave us a feeling that, you know, we're all in this together, trying to make something a little different, a little special. Yeah. Crew had incredible range of diversity on every level, behind the camera, in front of the camera. Mm-hmm. And it was a magical experience.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, two things. One, I don't want to lay the high praise on you. Just right?
You know,
feel free.
They've given us, for the record, they've given us 5 episodes. I saw all of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I've only seen 3 so far. I'm gonna go home and watch the other 2 because I'm into it. I just didn't have. I got it yesterday, so I haven't had time. But I watched 3 last night, and it was like I was telling Forrest. It's one of the first shows I've seen since The Wire where you have, you know, these levels, like where you're seeing not just the drugs, but also the politics and also the religion and how they all relate. But my question is, how do you manage tone on a show like this? Because you have moments like what would a man do with Miss Ohio? You know?
Exactly.
You know? And then when Miss Ohio shows up, I'm like, is Powell gonna kill her in this scene? You know, when she says no?
Right.
And then, he flips it and, makes it to his own advantage. But you have such humor. And then you have Big
Darkness.
D, what's his name?
Big Dick Buster.
Oh, scary as hell, by the way.
I mean, yeah.
It's a real life character. We were told that story by
It had to be.
a guy named Chisholm, who was Bumpy's lieutenant for years, up in Harlem. And he told us that story, and he said that Bumpy, the cops wouldn't investigate black on black crime. So the community would know that there was a rapist out there, and the girls would say, this is who it is. And Bumpy would say, okay. And he'd catch the rapist, and he'd give him a taste of his own medicine. And so, and obviously you're hearing that from someone who ran with Bumpy.
Yeah.
You assume it's true. And I, the minute he said that, I said, well...
Well, that's going in. That was smart.
Yeah, and so,
So how do you balance that tone on that?
I mean, I'd say our tone is that we're telling the real story. And the tone, I don't know, I feel like sometimes we're not concerned necessarily about the tone. It tells itself. We know that there's going to be humor because there's a lot of funny shit going on up there. We know it's going to be deadly and scary because we've heard deadly, scary stories. And then it's just a matter of kind of putting all these elements from this world and making the right dish out of it. So, I don't know. I mean, how do you feel, Chris? Have you noticed it?
well, I mean, one way to get a tone from storyline, because keep in mind, every episode has 3 or 4 storylines. And so what we do is we break the storylines separately. And we ask ourselves, how do the storylines, even if one storyline is about Bumpy trying to, say, intercept a heroin shipment, and the other story is about, Mamie dealing with the crisis at the youth center. Neither story we've done yet, but okay, what's underneath it? What's the similar theme? What's this about? Is it about perseverance? Is it about forgiveness? And so, if you find the same theme underneath different stories, then it acts as an invisible glue. It keeps the show feeling in the same tone because fundamentally the storylines are meditating on the same theme, even if they're wildly different. And we don't write jokes. And at the same time, sometimes the humor just comes when you're writing. Like, for instance, just in the pilot, Malcolm comes in, and I wanted to establish right away that Bumpy considers Malcolm a hustler, and not like a religious icon.
He was just like,
no, I know you're here for the pork chop.
So he's giving him shit.
Get that,
which is great. I love the interaction.
Yeah. So and Forrest also will occasionally improv incredible stuff. In that first episode,
really
he steals his daughter's cherry from the ice cream sundae, and he says,
Have your attention, please.
"There's no cherry. Didn't come with no cherry. Sometimes they put it on the bottom. He just made that up as he was shooting the scene."